I can still hear the crunch of snow beneath my boots. It's been over a decade, but the sound, that sharp crack, still echoes in my mind like a warning. The air up there in Alaska was different. Cold that went deeper than skin, colder than any winter I had known. It wasn't just the temperature. It was something else. Something I couldn't explain, but I could feel it. I didn't believe in much, never did. That's what made it all the more terrifying when I realized I might not make it out alive. It was late November, and I'd been hired by a small research group to help map out a remote part of the Alaskan wilderness. Just the kind of gig I needed to pay off some debts and get away from the usual grind. The team was led by Dr. Reynolds, a biologist with an obsession for documenting wildlife no one had studied before. I didn't care much for wildlife, but when I heard remote, I figured it meant I could keep my distance from everyone else. The first few days were uneventful. The landscape was pure white, and the silence was absolute, but there was something about that quiet, unnerving, like it was holding its breath. We were about 2 days out from the nearest town when things started to get off. Dr. Reynolds had us set up camp in a small valley, the snow piled high around us. There was nothing but barren land and trees, tall, skeletal, and so still it felt like they were watching us. At night, when the winds would howl like a pack of wolves circling our camp, that's when I started to feel the eyes. It started with strange sounds. At first, we all thought it was just the wind, but then, something else. Footsteps in the snow. Deep, heavy, like someone or something was walking around our camp in the dead of night. I remember waking up one evening to see Reynolds standing by the fire, staring out into the blackness beyond the flickering light, his breath visible in the icy air. "You hear that?" he asked me. I nodded, even though I hadn't heard a thing. Just the wind. But I knew what he meant. There was something out there, something alive. The next morning, Dr. Reynolds seemed more agitated than usual. He insisted that we move camp. No one questioned him. We just packed up and headed out. The deeper we trekked into the wilderness, the more uneasy I felt. The quiet was thicker, like the whole world had stopped moving. No birds, no animals, not even the wind. Just silence, broken only by the crunch of our boots. It wasn't right. That evening, we set up near an old, half-frozen riverbed. Reynolds was more distant now, almost paranoid. He kept scanning the forest, as if something was lurking just beyond our vision. I'd never seen him like this before. His usual calm, collected demeanor had vanished, replaced with a restless energy. As night fell, I stayed close to the fire, not wanting to venture too far into the blackness of the trees. The air had a sharp bite to it, and the shadows were too thick. At some point, I realized I hadn't heard anything for hours, not even the wind. Then the footsteps came again. This time they were closer, too close. The crunching sound echoed across the frozen earth, distinct and heavy. My heart pounded in my chest as I looked around the camp. No one else had noticed. I was the only one who heard it, or so I thought. Reynolds suddenly stood up, his face pale as a sheet. "It's here," he muttered, barely audible. He had a look in his eyes I can't even describe. Something primal, like a man staring into the abyss and seeing something he didn't want to see. Before I could ask what he meant, the ground beneath us trembled. A low, guttural growl echoed through the trees, making the hairs on my neck stand up. My blood ran cold. It wasn't any animal I'd ever heard before. This was something far worse. Something unnatural. "Get inside the tents now," Reynolds barked, his voice cracking with panic. We didn't question him. We scrambled into the tents, zipping them up as quickly as we could. I didn't know what I expected, but it wasn't what came next. The growl intensified, and then came the sounds of something large moving through the snow. Heavy footsteps, followed by the unmistakable sound of scraping claws against ice. And then, a voice, soft, almost like a whisper, but so close it chilled me to the bone. "You shouldn't have come." I froze. The voice wasn't human. There was no mistaking it. It was deep, distorted, like the words had been twisted by some malevolent force. The hairs on my arms stood on end as the whispering grew louder. I held my breath, hoping against hope it would stop. But it didn't. The thing outside the tent was circling us, its presence unmistakable. Could feel us. It knew we were here. The air inside the tent was suffocating. I could barely breathe, the icy cold outside clashing with the warmth of panic rising in my chest. My heart was pounding so loudly that it drowned out the eerie whispers. But as the seconds ticked by, the sounds from outside grew louder, closer. The scraping of claws against the snow was deliberate now, slow and methodical. I could feel the ground tremble again, the beast circling us just beyond the thin fabric. The whispers grew into something more, an awful, incomprehensible chant. It was as though the very air around us was vibrating with dark energy like it was alive. I wasn't sure how much time had passed before the first scream tore through the night. It was Sarah. She was one of the researchers, a quiet, bookish woman who had been sitting closest to the tent flap. Her scream was raw, pure terror. It lasted only a few seconds before it was abruptly cut off. I leapt to my feet, my body reacting before my mind could catch up. "Sarah!" I shouted, my voice hoarse with fear. But there was no answer. Just the howling wind and that sickeningly deep growl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Reynolds was already at the tent opening, his eyes wild. "Stay inside, damn it," he ordered, grabbing me by the arm. But I could see the terror in his face now. Something had happened to Sarah, something that had stolen her away in an instant. The seconds felt like hours. And then, without warning, the tent flap was ripped open. My stomach dropped as I saw a massive shadow looming outside, a hulking figure with glowing, amber eyes. It was too big to be a bear and too distorted to be anything human. It moved with unnatural speed, its form shifting and blurring in the shadows. I froze, unable to move, to think. The creature stepped closer, its shape becoming clearer in the flickering light of the campfire. It was covered in matted fur, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part were its eyes, too intelligent, too aware. They locked onto mine. And in that moment, I felt something shift deep inside me. It was a wave of dread, of hopelessness that washed over me. I knew, deep down, that I wasn't going to make it out of there alive. Reynolds didn't hesitate. He grabbed a flare gun from his pack and fired it into the air. The flare shot upward with a blinding light, illuminating the area around us for just a moment. That's when I saw it, the thing's true form. It wasn't just one creature. There were three. They were all around us, moving silently through the snow, closing in. The flare was only enough to reveal them, not to stop them. The ground was shaking now, and I realized with a sickening feeling that the land itself was alive, reacting to whatever these things were. I didn't think, there was no time to think. I bolted out of the tent, stumbling over the snow. My breath was coming in short, panicked gasps, but all I could hear was the rhythmic pounding of my heart. And the growls. The voices in my head. "Run," I whispered to myself, as though the words might actually do something. But the voices, the eyes, they were too close. They were all around me, in the trees, in the shadows, just waiting for me to slip up. And then, just when I thought I couldn't run any longer, I heard something that stopped me dead in my tracks. A whisper. A voice, so close I could feel it brushing against my ear. "You shouldn't have come." And that was the last thing I heard before the darkness took over. I don't know how long I was out. I woke up to the cold, biting air against my face, my body stiff with the freezing temperatures. My head was pounding and I could barely focus my eyes, but when I tried to sit up, panic gripped me immediately. My legs, my arms were entangled in thick, cold branches. I had been dragged. I didn't know how far or by what. I pushed against the snow and the branches, my breath coming in ragged gasps as I struggled to free myself. The world around me was pitch black, with only the faint glow of distant campfires and the faintest stars in the sky. But something was wrong. The air felt wrong, heavier, like it was pressing down on me from every direction. My chest tightened as I scanned the area, my eyes darting around. I was still alive. That much was clear. But I wasn't alone. A noise, shuffling. Low, soft, almost like a breath. It was so close that I could feel it in my skin. My heart stopped as I turned toward the sound. I could just make out the shape of something moving in the distance, something huge and shadowed. The same amber eyes stared back at me from the darkness. They had found me. The creatures. I could feel them, close but not close enough. They were watching. And then I heard something else. A faint sound, someone calling my name. "David." David, it was Reynolds. But there was something wrong in his voice. A rasp, like he had been screaming for hours, his throat torn. It was strained, desperate. I couldn't tell if he was in pain or if something else had happened to him, but I knew one thing for sure. He was alive. And he was out there somewhere. I began to crawl toward the sound of his voice, ignoring the pain in my limbs, the cold gnawing at my skin. The snow was thick, dragging at me with each movement, but I kept going. Each breath felt like it was my last. And yet I couldn't stop. "David, help, please." I crawled faster, but then a sharp snap of branches broke the silence. The creatures were moving closer, the low growl vibrating in my chest. I knew they were getting closer to me, but I couldn't stop. Not now. Reynolds needed me. As I reached the edge of the trees, a shadow moved in front of me, so tall, so massive, it blocked out the light from the stars. I froze. I had no weapon, no way to fight back. And yet, something told me that running wasn't an option anymore. "You're not getting away," the voice whispered again. It wasn't Reynolds. It was them. The creatures, speaking with that same, twisted tone as if they were mocking me. I glanced to my left. A figure stumbled out of the shadows. It was Reynolds. His face was pale, his clothes torn, his eyes wide with terror. But it wasn't just the terror that stood out, it was the blood. He was covered in it. And not his own. "Reynolds," I gasped, barely able to speak. He didn't answer. His eyes were distant, unfocused. He was in shock, but not from the cold or the snow. From what he had seen. From what he had experienced. "They're watching us," he whispered, barely able to form the words. They want us to see." Before I could ask what he meant, the creatures moved. Faster than I could react, one of them was right behind Reynolds, its massive claws sinking into his back with a sickening crunch. I screamed, but it didn't matter. They didn't care about my screams. They didn't care about us. The last thing I saw before everything went dark again was Reynolds, his body being dragged into the trees. And those eyes. The amber eyes staring right at me. I woke up again, though I wasn't sure how much time had passed. The world was quieter now, too quiet. The blood in my veins felt like ice, and every breath I took burned my lungs. I was lying on the snow again, but I wasn't sure how I had gotten there. The ground was soft beneath me, but the air still bit at my face like needles. I tried to stand, but my legs refused to obey, and I collapsed back into the snow. The cold was starting to make me numb, but the terror still clawed at my chest, refusing to let me go. I could hear the growls in the distance again, and the whispers. That sickening, low chant that made my skin crawl. The creatures were still out there, and they hadn't forgotten me. My mind raced as I tried to gather what little strength I had left. Reynolds was gone. Sarah was gone. Everyone else had disappeared into the darkness. I had seen what was left of them, but I was still here. Why? Why was I still alive? I tried to push myself up again, this time with more force. My hands dug into the snow, scraping against the ice beneath. But I stopped when I heard the sound of something breaking through the trees. Something large, too large to ignore. I didn't dare look back. Couldn't. If I did, I knew I wouldn't be able to stop myself from running. But there was nowhere to run. The wilderness had turned against me. The very land was against me. That's when I saw it. A figure in the distance, barely visible through the trees. It was moving slowly, deliberately, and as it came closer, I could see its massive frame taking shape in the moonlight. It was the creature, the one I had seen before, the one with the amber eyes. It was walking toward me, its form shifting in the shadows, a mass of muscle and fur, moving with the confidence of a predator. Couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was stare as it came closer. "You shouldn't have come," it whispered, its voice chillingly close. It was too close now. In a sudden panic, I scrambled to my feet and started running. My legs were weak, barely able to carry me, but I didn't care. I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I would die. The creature was behind me. I could feel it, hear it, breathing down my neck. It was so close that I could almost feel its claws on my skin. I thought I heard footsteps behind me, human footsteps. I hoped it was someone else, another survivor. But when I turned, there was nothing. Nothing but snow. And the creature. It was right there, staring at me with those terrifying amber eyes. And I realized then that it wasn't chasing me. No, it wasn't after me at all. It wanted something else. It was toying with me, watching me, letting me run just long enough to make it hurt. And that's when I saw it. The bodies. Piled up in the snow, frozen and broken, twisted in ways I didn't want to understand. It was them, the others. They were all there, but they weren't just dead. They had been changed. The creature stepped closer, its claws scraping against the ground. It was almost as if it was offering me a choice. Join them. Become part of the pile of bodies. Or run, until I couldn't run anymore. I didn't know how much longer I had. I didn't know how much time I could hold onto my sanity, my life. I turned and ran again, faster than before, not looking back this time. I wasn't sure if I was running toward hope or toward my own death, but all I knew was that if I stopped, it would be over. I ran. I ran until my legs felt like they were going to collapse beneath me, until the snow beneath my boots turned to a thick, sticky mud of sweat and blood. My breath came in desperate gasps, burning my throat as I stumbled through the wilderness. But the creature was still there, always just behind me, never stopping. I could feel its presence even without looking back. Its breath was cold, chilling the back of my neck as if it was savoring my fear. The sound of its footsteps grew louder, closer. I could hear the snap of branches under its weight, the scrape of its claws against the snow as it stalked me like prey. And the whispers. Always those whispers. They filled my head, drowning out all rational thought, twisting the world around me into a nightmare. I thought I saw something in the distance, a flicker of light, a figure moving between the trees. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but as I got closer, I saw him. It was Reynolds. He was standing there, frozen in place, staring at me with that same vacant, terrified look in his eyes. His body was covered in dark, sticky blood, his face pale and gaunt. And then, just as I reached out to him, his mouth opened. "Don't run." The voice was hoarse, ragged. It wasn't Reynolds anymore. It was something else. It was a warning. But I didn't listen. I couldn't. I kept running, my mind screaming for me to escape. The creature was too close now. It was right behind me. I could hear its low growl vibrating in the air. It was going to catch me. I stumbled, falling face first into the snow, and when I tried to push myself up, I felt something heavy and cold wrap around my leg. Its claws dug deep into my flesh, and I screamed, a sound that was swallowed by the night. The creature's weight dragged me back toward it, and I knew in that moment that there was no escaping. But then something unexpected happened. There was a burst of light, blinding and bright, filling the trees around me. A flare shot through the air, illuminating the scene in stark, unforgiving detail. For a brief moment, the creature hesitated, looking up at the light as if it was confused, as if it wasn't used to being exposed. I didn't know who fired the flare, but it was enough. The creature recoiled, snarling in frustration, retreating into the shadows. I scrambled to my feet, the pain in my leg nearly unbearable, but I didn't care. I had to move. I had to get out of there. I didn't look back. I ran toward the light, toward the source of the flare, my mind numb with fear and pain. The light flickered and died as I reached it, but I could hear voices now, shouting. Someone was there. Someone was alive. I finally collapsed at the edge of a small outpost, a research station I hadn't seen before. The people there helped me, bandaged my wounds, and gave me warmth. But as I sat there, shaking, my body and mind exhausted beyond measure, I realized something I could never forget. The creature hadn't disappeared. It had simply been waiting, watching me. I never told anyone what really happened that night. The team that survived, the ones who helped me, they never asked. And I never spoke of it again. But I know what I saw. I know what's out there in the Alaskan wilderness. The creatures, the whispers, the eyes, they're still watching, waiting. And I know one thing for sure. I'll never go back to those mountains. Never. Years have passed since that night, but the terror hasn't left me. It's woven into my thoughts, into the very fabric of my being. Sometimes, in the dead of night, when the wind howls and the snow falls softly against the windows, I can still hear the growls, the whispers, the voices. They've followed me. I've tried to move on. I've tried to live a normal life. I've kept my distance from people, from places that remind me of that trip. But there's a part of me that knows I'll never truly escape. It's in my blood now. It's in my soul. And deep down, I wonder if anyone will ever understand what really happened out there. A few months ago, I received a letter. It wasn't from anyone I knew. No return address. Just a single sheet of paper with a message scrawled in dark, uneven writing. It read, "It's still watching. We haven't forgotten. You haven't escaped." That's all it said. It was signed with a symbol, one I recognized from that night. The same twisted, jagged mark that I had seen carved into the trees before we were attacked. A mark that seemed to pulse with a strange, unsettling energy, as though it was alive. Since that letter arrived, I've been on edge. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights, everything makes me jump. I can't sleep. I can't escape. The creature, or whatever it was, is still out there, watching, waiting. And I know that one day, it will come for me again. I thought maybe I could bury the past, forget it, move on with my life. But now, with the letter, with the knowledge that the thing I saw in Alaska is still out there, I know that there's no escaping it. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it wants, but I know that it's not finished with me, and I know that I'll never be free. The wilderness is calling again, and I fear that one day I'll hear those whispers in the distance once more. And when that day comes, I won't be able to outrun it.